And we are now live. So, hello everyone in the audience. I'm Dr. Mort Orman, and this is Paige Frizone. And we're having a live conversation today for our mutual benefit and hopefully for your benefit as well. Just to give you a little backstory, I met Paige for like 30 seconds on a on a Zoom call one day where she was talking. We were talking about what we do and the work that we do and who we are and where we came from. And uh, I had an immediate connection that I couldn't really explain, but I just felt like the work that she does is somewhat related to the work that I do. We probably do things very differently, but we're both trying to help out there, trying to help people, trying to improve their lives, and we just thought it would be a good idea to have a conversation like this in front of the public and just share. We don't really know that much about each other. I don't know a lot about what she does. I know a little, and she knows a little about what I do. Uh, so let me have Paige introduce herself and tell you what she does, and then I'll tell you what I do, and then we'll get into this.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Paige Frizone. As Dr. Mort said, I am a subconscious health practitioner. I help people process emotional patterns that are stuck in the invisible part of the brain that are signaling present day disorder, dis-ease, and dysfunction. That might be physical symptomology, that might be emotional patterns in their relationships or certain thought patterns in your life. So, as was mentioned, for sure, I'm sure that we go about our processes very differently, but the way in which you and I have come together today is so beautiful. And we were chatting before we hopped on today about how, yeah, we barely met each other. And at the same time, there's total trust in knowing that when we connect with the people that we do, it's for a reason. And we're here today to really talk about, the subconscious and healing stress in a really sustainable way and what these things are, what they mean. I think what's unique about this format that you and I will be co-creating today is that unlike one person interviewing another, we get to kind of host each other, support each other, figure out what, both of us do and how we serve the people that we serve. So what's unique about us as well is that I do find that you and I both have titles in our work that are unconventional or might have some curiosity around it. And so if you're comfortable, I would love to start there. And I have a curiosity for you, which is like, what is an anger and stress elimination expert? How do you define that? What is your system working with clients? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So by way of me telling you what I do, that's what I do. Is I'm an internal medicine doctor, retired now. Spent 23 years practicing in Baltimore, Maryland, and I also worked for 15 years as a corporate medical director for a health insurance plan. So I saw the insurance side of medicine and the administrative side of medicine. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, even before that, for 40 years, I've been teaching people what I learned about stress 40 years ago. That really helped me a lot. So I've been writing about it, talking about it, and teaching about it. And so what I'm focused on now is helping people, mainly men, but it doesn't have to be exclusively men, but mainly help people learn how they can actually eliminate anger and stress, which goes, like you say, goes against the grain of how we've been conditioned, to believe those things aren't possible. We've all been taught that life is just stressful and just anger is a normal part of life and you can't live without it or you can't live well without it. And I have found neither of those propositions to be true. You know, I used to be a very angry guy in my 20s and 30s, and discovered this process that I developed back then, and for dealing with all kinds of stress. I used it for anger and other problems that I was having as a young physician, and found that I absolutely could eliminate most of those problems. Not managing it. I didn't want to manage my anger. I didn't want. I just wanted to stop being angry. I didn't want to manage my fear of public speaking. I just wanted to be able to get up in front of people and speak and not be nervous about it. Um, so this whole thing about managing is like, I don't think that's what people really want. I think they want to be free of all this stuff, and you can. We have this amazing ability within us to do so many things that we don't think we are capable of doing, or we've been convinced by society at large, or the experts, or the gurus, or whatever we've been told, or our parents, or whoever conditioned us, that these things aren't humanly possible, and it's silly to even go for them, because It's a fool's errand, so yeah. So that's why I like to, so I like to be out there with the stress elimination. I'm not about managing stress. I'm not about managing anger. If you want to learn how to do that, there's a gazillion people that can teach you how to manage your anger and your stress. Okay. But there aren't many of me. There are a few other stress elimination experts.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I happened to stumble across a book that surprised the hell out of me that it was even out there that
Ah,
I didn't write. Another expert wrote called Anger Elimination. So there are people, and he says the same thing. He says, don't believe this myth that you can't eliminate anger. We all can eliminate anger. We all can eliminate stress. And I've done that myself, and I've helped many other people do it. So I need to be provocative because there's such an obstacle to people even hearing that what I do is different than the standard stuff that they've been exposed to. And I guess you have that same issue as well.
yeah, for sure. I love this because we are moving in such a direction in the treatment world where whether it's medical healthcare professionals, and I love that that's your background, as well as non-medical healthcare professionals, we kind of have to be a little edgy. We have to be a little radical in the world because we're paving a new movement of care, and it's urgent. Because the old way works for those it works for, but not for everybody. And what do we do with the rest of them? And so when you talk about this, it's so helpful. It's so important because you hear about anger management, you hear about all these maintenance types of systems out there. And even, the treatment systems that I've been part of in the Western world, it's all about managing medication and managing diagnoses and managing your thoughts. And I'm with you. We're like, let's get to the root. Let's get to the understanding that the body's designed to heal no matter what, regardless of limiting beliefs and diagnoses and life circumstances. And I too wouldn't be able to say that statement without having lived my truth and walked my walk and experienced a whole lot of treatment systems, as well as care modalities from Eastern and Western medicine, as well as integrative medicine combined. So I really appreciate this philosophy of you holding the torch for other people. And like myself too, there are some uphill battles because we have to demystify or destigmatize certain things. And in you calling yourself an elimination expert, by nature, there's this potential misperception that certain people can have of like, oh, this person might be calling anger bad, or they might be calling stress bad. And the truth is, we know like all parts are valuable, and we know that emotions have signals and they're sending messages for a reason to awaken us and protect us and all good things. And so then it kind of prompts this question of like, if we don't have anger, if we don't have stress, what happens? Like, what would you say happens on the other side of it?
It actually goes against our identity because we just have so accepted the status quo, and stress is just so much of a part of our lives that when someone comes along and says, "Hey, I can help you eliminate all your stress," most people go like, I wouldn't know who I was if I got rid of all my stress." I can't even imagine what that would feel like, so it's a very hard thing for people to say, "Oh yeah, I want to learn how to do that," which is what they should be saying. But a lot of people are reluctant, it's like, and you're right. And I always have to sort of qualify it. I'm saying, so I'm not trying to eliminate all your anger. And sometimes I'll say, I help people eliminate all the unwanted anger in their life. So there are times when you might want to be angry or need to be angry, or you're raising kids and you want to train them, to not get in trouble and not hurt themselves. Or sometimes something happens so bad, that you don't want to let it go, or not take some response to it that would indicate how displeased you are with the way things are going. So I'm not saying, never be angry. I'm just saying, but 80% of the time, the anger that we have could be completely eliminated if we just knew how to do it.
Absolutely. And we know that we're all operating on these loops, right? Like so much of the work that I facilitate clients through is helping them understand the root memories that are associated with unprocessed emotion and how that is signaling the physical body or emotional patterns like anger or stress. And so we're never really operating from who we are today, here and now. We're computers with old files that are operating from past parts of us. And so a lot of that anger isn't necessarily relevant in present day. And I don't mean that it's not valid, and I don't mean that it's not important. It's just that it's not necessarily coming from the present part of us. We just perceive that it is. And those perceptions are wired. They're wired, they're programmed, as
Absolutely.
you said.
Absolutely.
Right. So the neuroscience of it is something that I love geeking out about, just because we need anger to an extent, to a degree, for the fight or flight, response of knowing when we're in danger and when we're not in danger. But because we're all walking bodies of trauma in the world these days, we do have to consciously sift and sort through those cues of, hey, what's actually signaling like a past traumatized part of me that needs some attention versus, is this really who I am today, here and now? And so this is really where we get into like the difference between the conscious choosing brain, which controls what we're saying right here and now, versus the subconscious part, which is invisible. It's below the surface. It's 95% of our existence. And so when you say 80% of the time, if not more, the anger that we experience isn't wanted, or it's not necessarily, an accurate reflection of who we are today, that's so valid because it's coming from a different place. And I appreciate the desire to help people to lift up this collective belief that we're not here to suffer. We don't have to have it the way that everyone has said that we need it to be. And we can choose our own reality in a way where that subconscious part is really aligned with our conscious self. And we can create optimal wellness regardless of what we've been taught, which, coming from you with your history more in the Western world, is a huge deal. And I'm so grateful that you have that perspective.
Yeah. So I have a question for you that just sort of came up organically here. When can you remember in your lifetime, when is the first time you became aware you had a subconscious mind?
Oh my gosh. It's a great question. And I'm thinking about, you're asking me here and now. And I could tell you here and now that, for example, when I was a kid, I had night terrors until I was 7. So I woke up every single night screaming bloody murder, completely victim to whatever the invasions were that were going on, not able to recall that in waking life. Did I know at that time that it was subconsciously driven? Absolutely not. I was subject to people's stories of like, you have past life trauma, or you need a brain scan, or what's wrong with you, and all these different, pathologies.
When did you first go like, wow, I just encountered my subconscious mind that I didn't know that I had, because it was subconscious.
Yeah.
When's the first time you became aware that that actually was part of you?
It's a great question. I would say I've always been really informed by dreams, and dreams have been huge allies for me. And dreams were the easiest connection I could make into being like, that's a subconscious part of me. Those were parts of me that essentially it was as if they had happened in real life, because my dreams are super realistic. There were huge messengers. I knew exactly what they'd be communicating to me, even if I couldn't articulate them in present day. So that too, in a full circle way, did connect me to that young part of me too, that had no idea what was going on, because I was very gifted coming in with these visions and abilities to see whatever it was at the time. And so that's continued to echo throughout my life, of knowing that messages are being communicated in dream time. And I started developing a lot of rituals around that. I started being able to practice lucid dreaming. I have seen the shadow of dreams. I've seen the light of dreams. And so I have a unique relationship with it. I've studied it psychologically. So I really appreciate the way that dreams have played a role in my life. And it's not always pleasant and it's not always fun, but I have heard certain mystical theories, which I appreciate, that have named that if you have nightmares, or if you have certain dream time integrations or experiences, it's because it's saving you in a way from having to experience that in waking life. And then, of course, we can get super meta, super existential about parallel realities and different, realms of consciousness. And all of that is fantastic to entertain. I really like staying more in the realm with clients, specifically in the science piece of it. There's spiritual components, but I don't want us to get disembodied talking so much about the spiritual that we lose the neuroscience of it. So dream time for sure has been a huge place. I was like, oh, that's not me. That's not the choosing me, but that's still very much me in a different way.
Well, let me share with you some of my experience. When I was in medical school, I said I had a lot of anger, had a lot of anxiety, and at the University of Maryland, where I went, they offered free psychotherapy for any of the medical students that wanted to take advantage of it. So I volunteered, I think, in my second year of medical school, because I was just so freaked out. I mean, if I raised my hand in class to answer a question that I knew the answer to, I would just be a basket case. So I had a feeling it was going to hold me back in my professional career. So I wanted to do so. Anyhow, I got hooked up with this resident therapist in training at the University of Maryland. She used to be a dermatologist, and she left dermatology because half of what she was seeing were psychosomatic, skin rashes. So she thought she'd learn how to treat the real roots of it, and so she decided to become a psychiatrist. And so I would go in and meet with her once a week, and I spent several years with her. And the first time I realized I had an unconscious or subconscious was most of the time I would be talking in these 45, 50-minute sessions, and she wouldn't say a thing. She would just listen. She was a very good listener. And I'd be talking, and I'd be all over the place. To me, I was making no sense. Nothing was connected to anything. I was just free associating whatever popped into my mind. I said, towards the end of the session, it was like this. I have no idea what any of this is all about. And usually at the end of the session, she would say something very pithy, but it would be like, well, it sounds like what you're talking about is X. And I would, as soon as she would say it, I could look back on the entire conversation, and it was like there was this something inside of me that had been actually talking about X the whole time, and I was unaware of it. But everything pieced together, it all made logical sense, and it happened so many times in different therapy sessions that I met my unconscious in that regard. I really realized that there's something in me that's operating here, that's organizing my speaking, that I don't have any ideas there. And then it got even further reinforced when I did a pediatric rotation where for 3 weeks I was on the pediatric ward, or not ward, it was actually clinic. So outpatients would come, and we were each assigned one patient, one child to work with for the 3 weeks we were there, see them a couple times. And then at the end of that 3 weeks, we were all met with the professors, the seasoned pediatricians, and we were supposed to write up a report and present an oral, presentation of what we learned about our child and their medical problem. So I got matched up with a kid who had an imaginary friend, and his mother would bring him in. He was like 5 years old, and his mother would bring him in, and I would talk to them, and I'd find out about their story and everything. I had no idea what the hell was going on with this kid, or why he had an imaginary friend, or what. And I felt like, boy, I'm really gonna be in trouble when I have to discuss this case, because I know nothing. And so the day came in the end when we were all meeting, and I had to write up my presentation. So I wrote a bunch, and as I'm writing up my presentation, I'm thinking to myself, I don't have the foggiest idea what is going on with this kid. Okay. So a couple people went before me, they presented their things, the professor who was leading the thing and discussed it. And then it was my turn, and I presented all the information I had gathered. And I was getting ready to say to the professor, and that's the information I gathered, and I have to admit, I really don't understand what's going on. Before I could say that, okay, which is what I was about to say, he interrupted me, and he said, well, you obviously have a total understanding of what's going on with this child. And I looked at myself and said, I have no idea what's going on. But he obviously thought I did, and he was a pretty wise, intelligent, seasoned practitioner. So again, I got in touch with, there's this something within me that had organized that presentation, unbeknownst to me, in a very coherent manner that I didn't know was inside me. And so that's kind of how I came to really, wasn't a concept for me. I had actual experience in life that there is a subconscious operating below the surface that I don't see, but that has some really powerful, and is talented, has some real talents, that I didn't know I had.
Oh, yeah. This is the mystical gift of human experience. It's like, and people can get really woo-woo about it, and I appreciate that, and there's validity to that, but there's scientific proof and evidence to support the way that the brain is wired, and I wish that it wasn't such a blind spot in treatment protocol. And it is a muscle that we get to work. We can access the subconscious any moment of the day, but we have to know what we're looking for. So just as you said, right, and I'm so grateful you had a therapist that could mirror this for you, because a lot of people conventionally, just generally, this is not to throw shade on anyone, I love therapy, but conventionally in the Western world, the subconscious isn't something that's educated about in, like academic settings or in graduate school or whatever. And so when you can work that muscle for yourself and bring that awareness of subconscious to conscious level, it can become something that you can start serving others and doing for them, which it sounds like you had a beautiful parallel in being able to do that. But funny enough, circling back to anger, I find when we're triggered into reactivity, especially big explosive arguments or rage fits or those really higher energy emotions, we are instantly operating as someone else. Like we become someone else. We become hijacked. And yes, that's a trauma response, or that's a fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You can call it whatever you want, but we are physiologically, biochemically taken over by unprocessed parts of us. And then we start projecting those parts onto our partners and our family and our loved ones and all that. And if you're keen enough, if you practice this muscle of self-awareness, if you practice doing this root origin work, whether it's subconscious or anger elimination or whatever it is, I find that, yeah, you might get triggered again because we're human. It might not be as intense if you're doing the work, but you'll still get triggered for sure.
Mhm.
But once you're in that same old part, same old story that you're familiar with, you will start recognizing it in the moment of like, whoa, the things that I'm saying aren't even what I'm mad about, or the things that I'm saying can't actually articulate what's really going on under the surface. And if you start asking questions in the moment of your own reaction, which is very hard to do, that's a skill set that must be learned. It's nuanced. We can do it together. But if there's an awareness, because we have multiple brains working all the time for us, if we're reacting with this part of us, which is the reptilian brain, the other part of us might have questions of like, is that accurate? Where is that coming from? How old am I in this moment? Do I feel like I'm really wounded? Do I feel unworthy? Do I feel lack of love? Do I feel invisible? What is the actual feeling or the actual need that's not getting met? Because if you can track some of that, then some space can start being created of like, oh, I don't really want to be reacting this way. Now I'm going to choose something else. I'm going to choose to breathe. I'm going to choose to calm down. I'm going to choose to ask my person a question that I'm fighting with and maybe offset some of this energy. So instead of the 100% full blown, oh my gosh, inner dragon that's coming out, warrior nature that's trying to fend for our lives and perceiving danger, we might go there instantly, but then we have this ability to play with it. We don't have to stay stuck in that reaction, even though we're in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had mentioned I don't remember whether I saw it on your website or not, or whether it came up somewhere else, but you had mentioned that you lost like a decade of your life. You talk about feeling like you had lost a decade of your life. Can you and can you talk a little bit about it and what and how you got through that to the other side? You know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I really lost a decade of my life to severe depression, anxiety, anorexia, self harm, and ineffective prescription meds. I was in and out of treatment for a solid 6 to 8 years of that decade. I was really caught in the limiting beliefs that are lethal. Like, I want people to understand that usually when pathology comes along, it's not really the thing that is being treated. It's really what's underneath. It's an accumulation of things that are being treated. It's a cocktail of emotional charges that haven't been processed. And so I was really stuck in like, what's wrong with me? And I can't do this anymore. And I'm, unworthy. And a lot of these fusions that became identities, and then the identities became fulfilled in my life. And I spent so much time healing from that decade of behaviors, the decade of things that were killing me, only to discover that I lost more than 10 years. I lost my entire life to trauma because it was the things that came before those 10 years of manifestation that were responsible for creating the coping skills that it did. And so really what helped, my gosh, I have had so many saving graces in my life, but I'm so grateful for the treatment centers that I experienced that got me out of acute moments on a physiological level that was very needed at the time. Therapists, tons of therapy. I always knew I was here for something more. I always knew I was here to serve and to help. And so when I was in my own way, it was doubly impossible because I was like, gosh, if I could only get to the other side so I could do what I'm supposed to be doing here on the planet. And in the thick of me not being able to be in a relationship or hold down a school degree and being in and out of care, I Studied a lot. I studied personally, I studied professionally, I studied academically, a lot of integrative methods. I studied Eastern medicine. Of course, I have decades on my belt of Western medicine care firsthand, as well as, again, academically. And I experienced a lot of the limitations of like nobody talking about the subconscious in treatment. Nobody's talking about root cause trauma. And they're talking about CBT and DBT and ACT and different methods of controlling your thoughts or titrating or compartmentalizing. All of these skills are so valuable and important, but it only addresses 5% of the brain. So I'm like, what's up with the other 95%? And so then I'm in school, and thank goodness for that school. It was very open to Eastern medicine and yogic philosophy and Buddhism and really cool things. And I learned individually about different modalities: EMDR, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, shamanism, color therapy, chakra alignment, all different types of things. But it wasn't until me healing and really like getting myself off medication and, continuing to allow my body come back to base, where I realized, instead of studying every single modality on the planet, why not practice something that incorporates all of that together, including Eastern and Western? So I'd been exposed to the subconscious healing 8 years ago, maybe 9 by now. And I strayed a lot. I wasn't ready at the time. It was kind of like too much for me because I had been used to the Western way. I'd been used to kind of more therapy-based practices. And this hit it straight on the head. It was like so direct. I was like, I don't know what to do with this information. And so I had to really do my own timeline before coming back to this practice and being like, you know what, this really is so effective, so expedited in helping people get to the root cause. And this reminds me of something that you said before, but I really do have passion around helping people transition from the familiar dark space to the light, because there's such a misperception out there that it's all fun and games over here in the light. And the truth is, it's all the time. It's just a matter of having the tools, having the resources, having the community to be able to support you through that duality. And, am I perfect? Absolutely not. Am I human? 100%. Do I still have emotions? Yes. I have old parts of me that get activated, but I am vibrationally such a different person on a cellular level as a result of doing this subconscious work. And I would not be able to serve in the way that I serve, having not walked that path.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about the influences I had in my life, and I never had that long of a period where I was in trouble. Although, I had a lot of stress. Like I said, for a couple decades, I had a lot of stress and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. But again, getting back to there's a force that was operating in my life subconsciously that I didn't realize until recently. But I can look back on my whole life now and see that was driving me. And what it was I had the good fortune. A lot of people don't think it's good fortune today, but I had the good fortune to be born and raised in Baltimore. I was born in '48, and so I was growing up as a kid in the '50s, and I was a sports fan, among other things. And Baltimore had a couple good professional sports teams, and like any kid in the sports, I had my childhood heroes, and the Baltimore Colts were our professional football team. And there was one outstanding player named Johnny Unitas, who was the quarterback of our team, that I just latched onto. And my father had season tickets, and every Sunday for the home games, he and I would go to the game. It was like our bonding ritual. And I would watch Johnny Unitas, and I was just mesmerized by the guy. I mean, he was like so incredible. He was like the modern day, what's his name? The guy who just retired, the quarterback, famous quarterback. I forget his name. But anyhow, he was a guy. He would engineer these amazing comebacks when everybody thought there was no chance that we could win. He would engineer drive, and he just had this confidence. He had this winning attitude that was infectious. And I wasn't the only kid in Baltimore that picked up on that, but it really got into me. And I would spend afternoons when I would get out of school, and a buddy and we would spend hours throwing a football around, just the two of us, pretending we were Johnny Unitas and Raymond Berry, his favorite receiver. We were, just really idolizing this guy. And at some point when I was like 10 years old, we had just won this national championship game, and it was a big thing. And I remember saying to myself, I want to grow up and be like Johnny Unitas. And I also said to myself, well, I know that I'm not going to be an NFL quarterback, or I'm not going to be a professional quarterback. I know that much, but some way I want to grow up and be like this guy, And it was his winning attitude that really impressed me. And so then I forgot about that. I still idolized him. I still watched his games and everything. And then, so I went through life, and his winning attitude got me through a lot of the struggles that I had and the challenges that I had, where I was up against something in school where I wasn't that great a student to begin with, and then I figured out how to be a good student, and then I figured out how to get good grades in college, and then I got into medical school, and I figured out how to succeed in medical school, and then I figured out how to succeed as a doctor, and and it to me it's all this win. I mean, I had the Johnny Unitas winning attitude. It was like it didn't matter what the obstacle was. I was going to find a way to win, and I was going to stick with it and keep trying and trying different angles and different. But then I just had that confidence that it was going to work out, and eventually it did. So I'm sitting in my office one day after I've been in practice for a couple of years, and I had a couple moments to myself, and I'm just thinking to myself, and I thought to myself, holy crap, I did become a professional quarterback. I'm a doctor. I'm quarterbacking my team. I've got this team of patients, and every day we go on the field and we fight illness and disease. And I'm leading the charge, and I'm calling the plays, and not totally, but I'm working with them to do that. But it was like I'm in that role, that same role that he was in the football, field, in the football context. And I saw my whole life stemming from that decision I made when I was 10 years old that I immediately forgot about, that I want to grow up and be like Johnny Unitas. I want to be the winner, like the winner that he is. And now it still drives me this very moment. I get up every morning and I want to teach other people how to win against stress, how to win against anger, how to win against whatever other things where they think they're stuck and they can't see a way to succeed. And I know there's a way for them to succeed if they just had the right orientation or insights or coach or system or whatever, And it doesn't have to be me necessarily, but at least I know that they're, from a human potential standpoint, they can achieve a lot of the stuff they want to achieve. And for me, that having that winning attitude helped me find the various paths that eventually led to where I needed to go. And I'm very grateful that I had that experience. And I think there's probably plenty of other kids who grew up in Baltimore who were influenced by Johnny Unitas that same way. And other towns had their, stars and their heroes too that affected a lot of people too. But again, it was really subconscious. It wasn't until many years later that I looked back and saw, whoa, that seems like that's the thread, that has been operating.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful story. And I appreciate you sharing, because I too treat the subconscious and upgrading the subconscious and these memories that we have like a game. And I see it in a parallel way, just because similar to like a computer game or a video game, the subconscious works 7 times faster than our conscious brain. And so what I'm hearing from you is like, you always had this resonance with this person who modeled for you confidence and game winning attitude and all of that. And because of the repetitions of like watching him and being being modeled from him and all this, you were able to almost program yourself, which is why like media and TV is so powerful, for better and for worse. If you find the right influences, the right speakers, the right meditations, the right thought patterns, the right mantras, like there's a way in which the conscious will only get you so far, but the repetition and the consistency, those two things you'll always hear are part of habitual reprogramming, because we need that. Like neurolinguistic reprogramming is all about those repetitions. It's like working any other muscle. And I love that you at least had these planted seeds within you of confidence to be able to allow that subconscious force to drive that each step of the way. No matter how much we perceive we're on the path or off the path, we're always on the path. And I really appreciate this mentality of it being a game, because we have memories that are stored every few seconds of our lives. It's like our eyes are cameras. We're taking snapshots of our environment internally and externally all the time. And so some might have kind of a limiting lens of what's the point of even trying if we're only going to be able to upgrade one memory at a time each session that we're together if I have infinite memories. And the other part of that is like, yeah, but every memory you upgrade unlocks different DNA potential within you to start vibrating immediately as a different person, as the person you always were and the person you were always meant to be.
Yeah.
And I have similar threads as you. Like, I, as a kid, was very exposed because of past life stuff and because of coming in really highly sensitive and having these night terrors. You know, certain concepts in the spiritual realm were not new for me, like past lives and white light healing and, you know, spirit angels and guides and all these things. That was just part of my childhood. And so my spirituality became something that was so unique and personal to me that was kind of separate and apart from that upbringing, though I'm very grateful for the influence. And yeah, there are just certain threads. Like, I used to think that I wanted to be a medium, like somebody who could just psychically read or feel different presences and energies. And I thought it was just the coolest thing. And I knew that I was capable of it. And the perception, the misperception, is thinking that we don't have that thing that we see, that thing that we want. The misperception is thinking we don't have that or we are not that. And the truth is, stepping into your power, stepping into your, you know, optimal potential is knowing that those gifts already live within. And so in a wild way, I named my business Inner Realm Wellness because it's all about bringing the invisible realms, the things that we can't see, whether that's energy or the subconscious brain or, you know, our heartbeat or memories, all of these archived invisible parts, to the visible realm, and be able to articulate that in a really powerful way for people to activate their own healing. So I'm doing something, the same trajectory, in a completely different way. And in fact, I have remedied a lot of the desires I thought that I wanted as a kid. Because, for example, I love mediums, I love psychics. Like, I think that's all great for whoever it works for. There's a time and place for everything, right? But I think there's a philosophy out there for some practitioners, not all of them, but for some of them, where you might go in and you might get a reading, and that means somebody's doing something for you, right? And in what I'm doing now, it's cooperative. So I want to be able to work with the client instead of doing their life for them or doing their work for them, because I can't do that. So I really appreciate the finessing, the nuance, the fine tuning that's happened as a result of like the inner child me and like the adult me, and seeing how those threads are still connected. And in a way, it was fated. It was like, it was inevitable to always be in the healing field, given my trajectory, given my past, given the struggle, and now just to be of service to other people who are going through it too.
Well, I love the fact that you're talking about making invisible things visible, because that's how I see myself now. You know, when I'm working with somebody around anger, or I'm working with them around other types of stress, what I'm trying to do is help them see the internal causes within themselves that are currently invisible to them. They're in a blind spot that they can't see. So and what I found over the years, and I've been doing this for like 40 years, is when you help people do that, when they can see the other puzzle pieces that they weren't seeing before. I mean, everybody sees the external stuff, but when you can see the internal stuff, the ways you're thinking, the way you're programmed, conditioned to behave, stuff maybe from your past, and all that. When you can see that stuff, most people, you don't have to coach them, you know, to fix the issue. I mean, now that I see what's going on, I can figure out how to fix this, or I can see multiple ways that I can do something different, or think different, or see the situation differently. So, and then I also realized that that's actually the same thing that the value that I had as a physician. I mean, I went to school for 7 years to learn how to make things that are invisible to most people,
right,
visible, at least to me. So that I could, and sometimes to them, so that I could help them. So the whole training of the whole value of a doctor is that we can see things, you know, going on inside a person's body that they can't see, and that an untrained person can't see. You know, we put a stethoscope on your chest and hear various sounds and get an idea what's going on in there. We do X-rays and blood tests and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, we can talk and get patterns, and we can figure out what's kind of invisible, and that's the value that's why people come to us, you know, because if we're good at it, then we can help them either cure what they're having, or treat what they're having, or live with what they're having in a positive way. But so I saw that like the same, and then the other day I realized I'm an internal medicine doctor. I can't tell you I didn't make the connection.
I love
But I'm always dealing with the internal now,
Mhm.
and not in the context of being an internal medicine doctor so much, but being a stress elimination coach and anger elimination coach. I'm still doing internal medicine, internal healing to
That's
help people. And so these funny cosmic sort of realizations that you can see that they're threads that go through your life that you didn't notice or you didn't pay attention to, that like I could walk around for 50 years calling myself an internal medicine physician and not realize that it's related to what I'm doing now, which is kind of crazy.
totally. And we're only ever operating from our lens of perception at any given moment. And so, in a way, I feel similar. I feel like I'm chasing my tail a lot of the time because the things that I'm saying here and now are true and they'll be true for me probably for years to come. But I could look back on this conversation and years from now and be like, oh, that's what I was talking about. Right. There are threads even in this moment
Yeah,
that are
yes,
co-creating this experience that are so divine. And it's hard to track. But if you take yourself through your day, every single moment, you practice that muscle of checking in. How am I feeling? Why might I be feeling that way? Where maybe is this coming from? How old do I think that part is? What does that part really need? What is the need that it didn't get met at that time? Like you will start this compassionate inquiry practice for yourself where you will start getting answers that you didn't think you had access to. And interestingly enough, in this day and age, with the modern medicine that we're now being exposed to with all these integrative methods, a lot of people seem to still seek externally for these answers. And so, whether that means like some types of not recreational, but recreational or, psychedelic drugs or medicinal types of practices or ceremonies or plant medicine or those things are all fantastic. I think they're great for, again, who they're great for. But I never want somebody perceiving or believing that they also don't have that wisdom within them. We can access that. Even breathwork practitioners are like, we can access our ancient DNA just by breathing in a deep state. And so just holding all of it with such gentleness and compassion, knowing I just like helping people find what works for them in a way that works for them. It's not about trying to teach them my way or the highway. It's like, listen, I had a lot of things that helped me get to be who I am today. And this was a staple of them. And this is what I love to geek out about. I love the neuroscience of it. I love the intersection of science and spirituality. I've been in the transpersonal world for a while here, but I love this conversation of just helping people maybe track the subconscious throughout the day to day of like, what are the threads of my life? What are the themes that I know for sure? What can I maybe learn from the invisible forces that are around me? And then just ask questions. And
yeah,
sometimes the answers are right in front of us.
yeah.
So,
I see a lot of what I'm doing is reconnecting people to truth. So when they're angry, they're usually disconnected from the truth.
mhm.
Not all the time, but a lot of times. So I help them. And same thing with stress. I help them try to understand the truth about anger and stress, and then I want them to understand the truth about where it's coming from. I'm not saying absolute 100% truth, just good enough truth. Good enough model that it works. You can do something with it. So it doesn't have to be 100% accurate, but um, and then so the truth about where their stress and anger is coming from, and then when they see those internal causes, then you have to say, how accurate and truthful are they? Where are they representing what's really going on or distorting what the real truth about life is? And I saw you had made a statement that I picked up, I think, on your website of something about how we're constantly forgetting and remembering our truth.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you about that. What does that mean for you, and how do you see that?
Oh gosh. We're programmed to forget. We're literally programmed to forget who we are and remember who we are. And I have such a tenderness around this because the remembering can be really painful. Like sometimes we get in this mind game where we're like, oh, I thought I learned that lesson already. And how humbling it is to come back on the sacred spiral in a different rung of this ladder from a different perspective, whether it's zoomed out or zoomed in, whether we're closer to the issue at hand or we're further away, we perceive that we're not making progress, or we perceive we're in the same place that we were 7 years ago or whatever, when in reality we are always growing, and we're just forgetting that we're growing. And so I love bringing kind of the evidence to support it. Obviously our cells are regenerating all the time, our hair is always growing, our fingernails are always growing. We have constant, rejuvenation, regeneration. That's our nature. That's our design. And I think that some of those facts can really help. Like if you're seeking evidence to support that you're growing, you can go at it on a physical level, cellular level, emotional level. I help people remember. I help people find evidence to support the truth of them. And that truth is subjective to each person, of course. But same as you, when you say people are angry, they're disconnected. When people I see who are in any type of addiction, whether it's addiction to thoughts or addiction to, food, or addiction to retail therapy or addiction to substance, like it's always a disconnection from something greater. And that doesn't have to be the universe or God or creator or source. Like, yeah, that's part of it. I think spiritual connection is huge, but it's connection to self. It's connection to higher self. It's connection to inner self, to intuition. It can be whatever that person needs it to be. And it is mystical because it's everyone needs a guide, everyone needs support. And I just want to help them remember what they've been programmed to forget. That's really what it is.
So before we wrap this up, let me ask you, do you have any last question that you want to pose to me? You don't have to have one, but if you have one, I'd be happy to answer that. And then we'll wrap this up for the audience.
Well, I'm curious. I think just a question I want to throw out there for you is, what is your relationship to imagination, and how does it play a role in the work that you do, if at all?
Well, as I mentioned to you before we got on the air, I said we basically imagined this this meeting today, and we made it happen. So, yeah, I think, and I think Einstein, has a famous quote about imagination, and yeah, it's it's one of our human superpowers. I see it as coming from language, and the fact that what makes us different from most animals is that we have this immense linguistic set of capabilities, and one of which is just to imagine things and then make them happen, or figure out how to make them happen.
Right.
When John Kennedy said we're going to go to the moon in 10 years, nobody knew how to do it. As a matter of fact, most people thought it couldn't be done. But he said, well, let's imagine it, and let's just throw in language. Let's just throw it out there. And of course, he had more than just language. He had the power of the presidency to make it happen. So he could put resources to it and put people to it and put money to it. But eventually they did what they had to do, and they figured out how to do it, and it happened. So, if you look around, I think just about everything man-made, woman-made, human-made that isn't us, and even that, but comes from somebody's imagination. The skyscrapers don't just appear out of nowhere. They come from imagination. Computers come from imagination. This cup comes from imagination. So imagination is like one of the most powerful forces that human beings have. And it's probably why we became such a dominant species, because we can imagine things and then coordinate linguistically to make things happen and do all kinds of wonderful things. So I think it's really, and I love creating things. I love just sitting down with a blank piece of paper. So let me create a course, or let me write a book. I've written like 20 some books, and that's how it starts. You take a piece of paper. I might be on an airplane ride somewhere, and I take a piece of paper and I write, the outline for like a 20 chapter book. Not the book itself, but the structure of the chapters and all this. And I step off the plane and I have something that I could make real. It's like unbelievable. And then share that with other people, and they can get the benefit of whatever it is I wrote down there, So yeah, so I love imagination. And you, your relationship to it?
Oh, it's huge. It's everything. My imagination kept me alive for many years. And I think that that's the case for a lot of folks who've experienced trauma. if they have to be disembodied and live in their heads, that makes brilliant sense. So I was really into imagination as a kiddo. I played with sticks. I thought they were magic wands. Like, I had a very big imagination. And in session with people, I use imagination all the time when it comes to neurolinguistic reprogramming and helping them actually envision a world that they don't need to have right this moment. If we expect that we have it right now, when we're at 10 out of 10 stress, there's no way we're going to get there. But if you actually can create that playful, world inside, whether it's like virtual reality, or if you think about being in the stars, or if you think about a parallel universe, whatever you need to think about to go to a place where you can feel the wholeness of who you want to be at some point someday, then we can start activating the chemistry of whatever the brain and the heart are looking to feel in sync about. We can start programming the mind to feel more from the heart space, which electrically is so much more powerful than the mind. And so we use it very strategically in session. And so I say for people, like, beliefs are programmed, and that's for better and for worse. And just know that you can start envisioning a different world. It doesn't have to be a reality right now. Like, you have resources and we can help you, and you can find anyone out there who might be really open to help. But you can start envisioning, like, what might it be for me to go to a different coffee shop today? Or what might it be for me to actually decline that call if it's in my best interest? Or maybe I can make more money than I ever thought I could. Like, even the supposition, even the supposing and the hypotheticals, like all of these ways of working the brain actually do something. And so I encourage people to live big and don't quit your dreams, don't quit your daydream, and just know that there's always light right around the corner.
Well, I want to thank you very much for co-creating this experience for our respective audiences. And I just want to remind everybody, at the start of this, we didn't really know much about each other. I got a glimpse of her for 30 seconds on a Zoom call. And I just had a sense that there was something special about this lady that I thought I wanted to share with my audience, and her have something where she can share with her audience. And I've had a lot of fun, and I think we've had some good discussions, and hopefully people listening have gotten some insights. This was great. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate our time, and may it serve those who need it right now.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
We'll sign off.